is the Revisionary Podcast with your host, Juan Carlos. The Revisionary Podcast.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Revisionary Podcast. And as always, I'm your host, Juan Carlos. So, if this is your first time listening to the Revisionary Podcast, the way this works is we have guests come on, usually comedians, who tell a nonfiction story about their lives in which they wish things had gone a little bit differently. Afterwards, I give them an opportunity to retell the same exact story, except this time, they get to change any facts or details that they want about their story. And then we discuss the impact of the changes that they've made. First and foremost, thank you for coming back for another episode. We have a few exciting announcements. Drum roll, please. We're finally on Pandora. That's a huge deal. So for those of you guys following along at home, we're on Pandora, we're on iHeartRadio, we're on Stitcher, we're on Castbox, we're on Spotify, we're on Apple Music, we're on Amazon, we're literally almost everywhere. We're even on YouTube. So make sure you help spread the word. And also, if you haven't already, please go on Apple Podcasts and go ahead and leave me a rating. Give me the 5 stars and just write a little review. It'll help the podcast grow immensely. Also, as I mentioned previously, we have Gastro Almonte coming on December 19th at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific time. So please make sure you follow us on Instagram so that you can go ahead and follow along that conversation and just talk to Gastro about his story. Ask him questions, anything that you were wondering, anything that I didn't think of. That's your opportunity to speak to him directly. So he'll be on lending us his time, and that'll be wonderful. And it's going to be a lot of fun, so I'm excited for that. So today, we actually have another very exciting guest, and you guessed it, he's a comedian. His name is Kirk Griffiths. And I actually met Kirk in an interesting way. A lot of you remember Alan Massenberg and his story. Well, while we were trying to promote for Alan Massenberg's episode, Alan invited me onto his podcast called Proper Ebonics, which he actually hosts with Kirk. And Kirk and I, honestly, we hit it off right away. It was a very productive episode. If you haven't heard it, go on Proper Ebonics. I'm a guest on it. You can hear it. Alan, I, and Kirk have fun conversations, and we even get breaking news during the recording of the podcast, so that was a lot of fun. But now, I get to have Kirk come on to my podcast, and we get to have both members of Proper Ebonics come on, so that's pretty cool, and I'm really excited for that. So without further ado, let's see if we can go ahead and get Kirk on the line. Hello, Kirk. How are you?
Chilling, man. Chilling. What's up, Juan Carlos? It's been a while.
Yeah, it has been. I'm so excited to have you on the Revisionary Podcast.
Yeah, man. I'm ready to tell stories and then tell more stories.
So what have you been up to?
Just wilding on, just trying to stay indoors as much as possible. Been rip sticking on occasion. It's getting a little cold out, so I treated myself to a new jacket, walking around looking fly.
What does rip sticking on a cage mean?
Rip sticking, it's like like skateboards, but this one it's like a swivel stick. You see a lot of 12-year-olds and me riding them. So that's something I practice from going into Target for years and opening up the ripstick and riding it on their perfect marble floor. And then I think maybe 4 years later, I finally bought one myself.
Oh, so you were just opening random packages, and how did you not get in trouble for that?
I think they just saw how I was riding. They were impressed by that and assumed probably I was like a representation for ripsticking. They're like, oh, he must be like one of their ambassadors or something like that. Never got in trouble for it. I think they're just impressed. My last run-in with the cops was in Lancaster. They stopped me while I was ripsticking, and they said, hey, what is that? They pretty much just wanted me to do a show and tell for ripsticking. I'm just that nice with it.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Interesting. I've never. So, where I'm from, we just walk everywhere. That's kind of our main mode of transportation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait. Juan Carlos, where are you from?
You already know. BX.
So what are we talking about? I'm talking about you saying you're from somewhere. Where are you from, bro?
718 BX, Bronx for life. So
183rd and Lauren Place was popping.
For those of you listening, Kirk is also from the Bronx, so it's rare to have another member of the Bronx.
Yeah.
We're also a testament that being from the Bronx doesn't mean that you have to be tough. I mean, some people are tough, but I
Yeah,
certainly
speak for
am
yourself,
not.
bro. Speak for yourself. I was just doing 3 push-ups before this. No, that is a very that is a very true testament. We're mentally tough. We have a mental fortitude.
Sure. No, I like to joke around. People, when people say like, "Oh, you're from the Bronx, you don't act like it, you don't talk like it," I was like, "Well, this is what it sounds like when you grow up in the Bronx." And by that I mean I grew up in a neighborhood so bad that my parents kept me inside and raised me on the Disney Channel. So here we are. This is the result of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I was allowed to interact with people outside. But yeah, for whatever reason, I ended up talking like a character from the Torkelsons. So here we are.
I will say the biggest life hack was I think I had convinced everyone in my neighborhood growing up that I was going to be a baseball star. And I don't know how, because I wasn't very good. But I think people believed that I was going to make it to the majors. So people generally left me alone, especially when I was in the schoolyard practicing pitching and throwing and doing all that.
Okay. Stuff. So you were practicing. It wasn't like they just assumed baseball.
No.
All right.
It's like it was all I talked about 24/7 was baseball, and then I was in the schoolyard throwing a ball all the time, and I always had my bats and always playing pickup baseball. You know what I mean? Like I was playing.
Okay, that makes a little more sense. I could see why they would think that. I think because I was on the smaller side, for the most part, I found throughout life, I've always kind of talked my way out of situations without even knowing it. It was never like a conscious, like, oh, I'm going to use logic on this one. It was more like, oh, okay, well, this is my instincts. I'm going to use these words. And usually those words, they work.
Mm. Yeah. It's funny looking back on it. Like I put myself in situations and I didn't even realize that they were dangerous. Like I remember one time in particular, I had seen this guy in the neighborhood and I was seeing him around a lot more. Okay. Before, so I assumed he was just new. And I come downstairs and he was standing by the intercom.
Okay.
And like just kind of looking around both ways. And I'm just like, dude, what are you doing? He goes, nothing. I was like, oh, okay. So how have you been? He goes, I'm a little busy right now. Can you like go? And I'm like, yeah, sure, whatever. And like I thought about it years later. I was like, oh no. He was definitely on a lookout during a robbery, and here I am, like, asking him questions, and he's like, bro, keep it moving, keep pushing.
Yo, bro, how's your day going? How's your mother? Do you see their closed cow doors? I can't believe it.
Meanwhile, this guy's trying to commit a crime. Yeah, no, so that's wild times growing up. So why don't we go ahead and get right into this, Kurt? The stage is yours.
Yeah. So this story actually kind of bleeds in to what we were talking about because it took place in the Bronx. So everyone has their fears. Everyone has their fears and such. This story that I'm about to tell is the recognition, or rather the realization of what your fear could be and what it could turn out to be. So I am 8 years old. I'm in Bronx, New York, going to school. 8th grade, Miss Leone's class. It's around fall, so New Year has not come upon us yet. And I remember distinctly, there's this girl, Margaret, and I thought she was lovely. So Margaret, she starts telling me, she's telling me about all these things that her brother was telling her the week prior, and it's all about horror. Halloween it may have just happened, or it was about to happen, but it was around a spooky season. And some of the things that Margaret relayed that her brother was telling her was that if you look into the mirror at night, and if you spin around and say Bloody Mary, that Bloody Mary will come out of the mirror and chop you up with scissors.
I don't know if that's a Bronx thing or whatever, but I also remember like as a child being tortured with those stories as well.
Yeah, this is my first time hearing those. But she went on to go on a little bit more detailed, like, oh yeah, and Chucky, who I did not know at the time. I think I had a friend named Chucky, but she was like, hey, Chucky is also real, along with Freddy Krueger and Candyman. And if you're by yourself and you even think of saying their name 3 times, they will come out and they will get you. Now, Margaret is telling me the story, and, I'm looking at her eyes because I think she's a cutie pie at the time and all that stuff. And I didn't think it was real. I remember being like, this is goofy. She's doing this to get some sort of reaction. Even in 3rd grade, I was like, she wants to get a reaction out of me. So I have a good friend named Janelle. He's older than me. By 1 year, he got left back a bunch. I'm not trying to blow up your spot, Janelle, but you got left back, bro. And so Janelle is like my best friend slash bodyguard slash bully, the trifecta. He had it. Janelle had it all, baby. I knew Janelle had street smarts, and I knew Janelle knew a lot of things that I did not know. So he was also in the class. Right. I go over to him and I was like, "Hey, Janelle." So I'm talking to Margaret, and she's telling me this ridiculous stuff about, what was it, Freddy Krueger? Like if you say his name 3 times, and Bloody Mary and Chucky. And I list it. So I retell him everything she said. And Janelle, my protector, my confidant, he looks me dead in the eyes and says, "Kirk, yeah, that's all true." And I'm like, "Oh, what do you mean?" And he's like, "Yeah, no, that's definitely true, especially the Candyman one." And then he goes on to go in further detail of what these creatures and mythical beings would do to me if I were to even think their name. So this is 3rd grade, and also a turnaround point in my life. Because the moment he said, "Kirk, it's true," I felt a level of dread that I'd never come across before, a level of anxiousness that I had never come across, a level of fear, of uncertainty, danger. And it was contrast with everyone else's casualness about it, Margaret and Janelle, as if like this is something that they knew their whole life, and they may have been frightened before, but they've accepted the reality. Mm-hmm. And I am just now being introduced to it. That was frightening. So I don't remember what happened during school for the rest of that part.
Sure.
I think I was paralyzed with fear. I know that. I know when school ended, I lived not far away from my school, so I could walk home. Mm-hmm. It was like an 8-minute walk. And I remember not wanting to leave the school. Like I didn't want to be left alone. Because I thought that's when I would be the most vulnerable. Typically I would walk and be afraid to go in a certain corner because that's where I'd see bloods, which Janelle put me on to. I was like, "Hey, look at those guys in red." And Janelle was like, "Yeah, they're bloods." And I was like, "Oh." That didn't even cross my mind. I was like, "Yo, Freddy Krueger would knock these bloods out." So I was more fearful of them. If anything, I should have just hung out with the bloods. They would protect me. Yeah, I should have. I probably wouldn't be. What's up?
I have a question for you, because you're mentioning something that I also experienced, growing up as a kid. Did you also have that fear of wearing certain colors outside?
When I learned about the Bloods, yes.
Yeah,
when I learned about Bloods, and when I learned about the Latin Kings, I never Crips were never like a thing around where I was. At least I don't think so. No one ever talked about it. But you would actively see people in all red. You would see them all pink. You would see them in all yellow, and those would be like But I think that fear kind of went away on its own because they weren't as prevalent, but they were around, and I just didn't think anything would happen after a while. That reality set in for me.
I didn't feel fully comfortable wearing all red until I was in college.
Oh, wow. Until you were at college when you joined the Bloods?
Well, listen, I am not a gang member. Thank you very much, Kirk.
Okay. I didn't feel secure until I got jumped in, bro. Then I know it was blood for life.
Blood in, blood out. I'm sorry for interrupting you. Go ahead.
Oh, that's crazy. So I'm walking home. And I'm frightened this whole time. I'm going past buildings, and just on my mind is everything of like, my mom has this huge mirror in her room. That's going to be like an easy target for them to get me. What am I going to do? I don't know what to do with my body. This is something that is completely new to me, that I haven't experienced these emotions before, at least on a conscious level. It felt very much like when you're a baby and you're crying and you have all these fears and you don't really know why you have these emotions, but you're a baby. But when you're 8 and you start having those, it's like, oh, I can articulate certain things. It was frustrating and a moment that I one of the moments I don't want to relive, but I'm going to do it now. So I walk back to my apartment, 2226 Lauren Place. Don't write to me. Don't write to me. I realize I just said the address. Don't write to me. I don't live there anymore. So I go there, and I think you may have had this experience as well, where like there are intercoms with a lot of buildings. So it's not like you just go into your apartment. You have to go into the intercom, dial in, if you don't have a key, that is, which I did not, because my brother would have been home. But you have to do the intercom and say, hey, I'm so-and-so, and then you have to be buzzed in.
Right.
Our intercom was in this kind of like little hovel. So you had to go in through one door, do the intercom, and then get through. And then for my apartment, I had to go through these stairs, like not up them, but next to them. So like to the apartment, there's like these stairs that people would put their storage, and they would just be like this empty black space behind the stairs that I had to go past. Juan Carlos, I stood out there for a good 30 minutes because I did not want to go into that little hovel where the intercom was, because not only would I be by myself, but I would be by myself in an empty space.
Oh, you were terrified.
Yeah, I did. And I was hoping that like maybe somebody would come, like a neighbor, something like that, and they would have the key, and then I could just knock on the door. And I didn't have a cell phone, so it wasn't like you could just call and be like, hey, the door's locked, can you come outside? So I waited for a while, and then eventually someone did come after about 30 minutes, and I'm just terrified. I was terrified going into intercom, and I'm terrified of the stairs. I'm terrified of the stairs, what's underneath the stairs, the darkness of the stairs. In practicality, if anything, you should be more frightened that someone is hiding or just peeing under the stairs. That was a common thing. I think I peed once or twice in there too. Actually, it's kind of nice.
Did you just snitch on yourself?
You know it. But I was more concerned that one of these creatures from one of these horror movies and myths were going to be coming from the stairs, because if Bloody Mary and Freddy Krueger and Candyman are real and I had no idea about them, what are some of the other things that I had no idea about? The stair monster may very well be a thing. So it's just panic that I'm going through. I go home, I'm in there, and it's my brother and my mom. My brother, he is about 3 years older than me, and my mom is a student at Montgomery County Community. Not Montgomery County, Monroe Community College. She has night classes that night, so I know that she's going to be leaving the apartment soon. And it's just going to be my brother and I until my grandmother got home. In my head, I'm like, I want this to be the whole family's here. please just protect me with your love. But at the same time, I did not tell them anything. I did not tell them about the fear that I went through that day. I did not tell them that Janelle had told me a story that terrified me. And I don't remember why I didn't. I don't know if it was out of embarrassment. I don't know if it was out of, I didn't even want to retell those words again. I think that was a big part of it. But it's easy to say, like, I stuck by my mom's side for at least 2 hours. I stayed in the bed with her. You remember there was a music video by a prominent artist, Cher, called Believe, and it's, do you believe in a thing called love? Do you believe in love after love? So that song haunts me.
Why?
Because the music video for it played, and it was one of the first things I saw once getting home that day. And I associate that with dread, fear, anxiety, and Freddy Krueger. So it's a great song. Cher, if you're listening, it's a great song. I think the records show that people enjoy it. And I've come to appreciate it as an adult, but that terrified me. My mom, she ended up leaving, and I stayed with my brother. There was no prominent big action in this one. There was no, like, I told my brother that he went and fist fought with Janelle. That didn't happen. There was nothing like that. I didn't tell anyone, like no one. And perhaps because of this, perhaps from concealing it, I would go on to, I wasn't able to sleep by myself. I wasn't able to sleep in the room with my brother. Because we had bunk beds. I was just terrified. So that led to me sleeping in my mom and grandmother's bed, rotating for about a year and a half.
Sure.
A year and a half of sleeping in their bed, and because I was like, I just didn't want to be left alone.
And they had no idea why.
No idea. I didn't voice either. I was never like, oh, I'm afraid of something. It was just, I don't know how the fear manifested itself, and I don't know why I didn't tell them anything either. I genuinely try to think back, like, was it a fearful thing or was I embarrassed? Was I going to look silly?
At the end of the day, you were 8, right?
Yeah, no, I was 8.
So you weren't mature enough to make, mature decisions and to have adult conversations about your fears and your inhibitions at the time. I mean, so I think it's perfectly understandable you would have kept it to yourself.
I suppose, yeah. It's just I don't recall. I feel like I was pretty open with talking about some of the stuff I went through as a kid, but for whatever reason, this one, I think because it seemed so real, and perhaps talking to people would mean that I'd have to say those words, and saying those words would leave me vulnerable. So perhaps that had a part of it too. Sure. This little tale became the catalyst of what went on to be chronic night terrors. Perhaps there's no one fully knows the psychology of what's going on in their brain, sort of thing. But upon moving out of the Bronx, I began getting like these chronic night terrors that usually had to do with insects. But what always stayed the same is the fear and dread that I had on that day in Miss Leone's class, with Janelle looking me in my eyes and saying, "Kirk, it's real." That feeling stuck with me with the night terrors. Didn't matter what the night terror was about. That feeling was there. And I would remember it as I woke up. And if I didn't remember it, I would wake up with a sore throat from screaming. And that would remind me again of that fear.
Wow. Thank you for being willing to share this with us.
Yeah, no, of course. Yeah, no, it's I've this whole time I've been like, yo, I can't wait to retell this tale, or I'm on top, I'm the hero, no night terrors.
Wait, do you still have night terrors to this day?
Yes.
Yes. And what exactly does that entail? Like, are you waking up screaming in the middle of the night? How does that work?
Yeah, they're not as frequent now. I will say that they're not as frequent now. But usually night terrors, and what's a little bit different from night terrors and nightmares, is that night terrors, you act it out a little bit. So a lot of times people, when they get night terrors, they will get out of bed. And in my case, a lot of times I'll feel that something is in the bed. So like I will get up and like look around, like what's in the bed, sort of thing. It's usually like an insect or some sort of animal. So it's not necessarily that you're thinking of something terrifying. It could just be like, oh, you see ants or whatever, but that feeling, there's like a level of anxiety that just takes over you. And then it's more so that feeling is then manifests itself into like imagination of the dream. It's not the dream makes you anxious, it's the anxiety makes the dream. So it's a lot of it's just like, there is screaming, but sometimes not the case. But sometimes it is also like, because a lot of times you don't remember them. At least in my case, you don't remember them until the next morning, or until someone reminds you, like, hey, did you have like a night terror last night? So the thing about the throat, that is a very good indicator as well. Like, oh, my throat hurts. Oh yeah, 3:00 in the morning, I was up. It was a night terror.
How has this affected your love life and your relationships?
You know me, bro. I get it popping. So yeah, like, yeah, like that's Freddy Krueger ain't got nothing on me, bro. Like, no, that never really affected it. I was in a relationship for like 6 years, and she would let me know, like, oh yeah, you did have that. Or it's worse for the person next to
me. Right. That's why
it is for me. Yeah. And there was a period maybe 3 years ago where I started getting them again, like frequently, like at least 2 times a week. But they've kind of edged out. So it's a stress indicator as well, I believe. So yeah, in terms of that though, it doesn't happen as often, but it does happen.
So if you don't mind me asking, what recent events would have triggered them? Like what kind of stressful events? You don't have to tell me a specific event, but you know what I mean? Like, well,
luckily now, in terms of recent, I haven't had them in a while, at least that I can remember.
Sure.
I haven't had ones bad enough where like I remember the next day my throat's hurting. It's been a while actually. because things I've been grateful. Things have been kind of like been cool for the last few months. But I guess like it could be just life events. Like
Sure.
say like if you're having like relationship issues, or it could also be like if you watch like a horror movie that like genuinely kind of frightened you, and like you're sleeping in the dark, your brain could take you places. I remember watching Hereditary and then being like, all right, I'm sleeping with the light on tonight. I'm like, this is a good horror movie. This is a very good horror movie.
So why don't we go ahead and jump right back into this? Kirk, go ahead and retell us your story.
So I'm in the 3rd grade. My name is Max. No. Am I allowed to change my name?
I mean, sure, you can change your name. I don't necessarily know that Max is any manlier than Kirk, but here we are. Unless that wasn't what you were going for.
No, I was 3rd grade. My name is Maximilian Fetchukovich. Sorry. So
why did you become Russian in this retelling?
shout out to Fetchukovich. That's one of my favorite names. I was finished reading The Brothers Karamazov by Dostoevsky, and there's a Fetchukovich in there.
Did you say any words in English just now?
Kind of. It was the Brothers Karamazov by Dostoevsky, and there's a defense attorney for Dmitri, one of the main character in it. His name is Fetchukovich. It's a good book, right? I recommend it. It's a family saga. That's
what we're learning here is that Kirk definitely has a higher IQ than me. So keep going.
That's maybe. I read that book just so I could raise my IQ, damn it, and say things like Fetchukovich and Grushenka. So I'm in 3rd grade. I'm chilling. I get down. I'm rolling in there. I got my Rolex on. I'm moonwalking to class. Miss Leone, she's the 3rd grade teacher. She's like, Kirk, you're running late. I'm like, I know, right? And we both high five. So I'm in there. We all chilling, all that stuff. I see this girl that she's been. I don't know if thirsty is the right word to use when talking about like your 3rd grade experiences, but she saw me moonwalking and she wanted to chat me up.
She was feeling your boy.
She was feeling the kid. She was feeling it.
Got it.
So her name was Margaret. She was very enthused when I came into the room, and I could tell she was a little nervous. And I understand that. So she was like, Kirk, hey, that's a nice hat. I mean, shoes. Oh boy, listen, I wanted to tell you a story. And I was like, all right, yeah, I got 3 minutes. Let's go. And she tells me this story that her brother had told her about. I don't know if you ever heard of this, like Freddy Krueger and a Bloody Mary. And there's like she starts telling me this stuff about like her brother was saying that if you say Bloody Mary 3 times in a bathroom, that Bloody Mary would come out and mutilate you with scissors. And then that Freddy Krueger would do the same thing, and something about like a candy man. And she hits the 3-minute mark. I'm like, yo, Margaret, chill. I don't want to hear that. That's a garbage story, and it's clear to me that you and your family are full of cowards, talking about how you're scared and all that stuff. I ain't scared. So Margaret, she's crying. She leaves, and then I see my boy Janelle. I'm like, yo, we about to get it popping. I hop over to Janelle. He's fly like me, but he's number 2 in the class. Janelle, yeah, he's number 2 in the class, and ladies and gentlemen, take a guess at who was number 1. So I'm talking number 2. I'm like, yo, fool, Margaret over there, she's crying right now. Yeah, that one. She just told me a story about like Freddy Krueger and Candyman and Chucky, about like if you say their name 3 times that they'll appear, and even if you think the names that they'll appear. Yo, Janelle, that's some cowardly talk right there. I can't believe she started off my Tuesday like that. And then Janelle, who I want to remind the audience, number 2, he says to me with the 1 teardrop coming out of his eye, actually, Kirk, my brother told me the same thing too last week. Those are all real things. I smacked the shit out of Janelle. I'm like, yo, number 2, what are you doing? Get it together. What you're trembling up right now. Miss Leone, she sees me and she's like, yo, smack him again. So, I'm a good student, so I do that. And I'm like, hey, Janelle, like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? I know his brother, JR. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, yeah, no, it's a thing. Like, if you say these things, I slap him again. I'm like, don't even talk to me about that nonsense, bro. Eventually, after like 20 slaps later, Janelle gets out this elaborate story about like, if you do say the thing 3 times, it will come out. And Margaret is telling the truth. They're both crying at this point. So I'm like, man, these third graders, they don't. But secretly, I kind of wondered. Like, I'm a cool cat at that point and all that, but I'm also a curious cat. So I'm like, is this how real is this? How this? So I leave school. Like right afterwards. I've decided, like, I'm done with this. I see Miss Leone. I give her a wink. She's like, all right, boy. So I walk home. And I'm walking home and all that stuff. And it's in the Bronx, so there's a few gang members and all that stuff. I see some Bloods. I see some Latin Kings. I dap them up and all that stuff. I asked them about. I was like, hey, Bloods, you ever hear this Freddy Krueger nonsense? And then they all start running away. I'm like, what is this about? This is crazy. What are they talking about? That's insane. It's backwards day in the Bronx because everyone's cowards. And I'm like, damn, I gotta rep right because they're turning us in Staten Island right now, and I don't like that. Don't like that. So I go over to my Bronx condominium. My mom and brother, they're inside, they're chilling, they're doing things they like to do. I don't have my key, and there's this intercom to get into the apartments in the Bronx. I went on to go click and all that stuff, but mainly there was this woman, her name was Beverly. She was a bit older. I helped her out with her stuff. So I waited until she got there because I know that she wasn't going to be able to bring her bags inside. So I waited until Beverly parked and was able to help her out. So I just kind of killed time for about 30 minutes. Probably like smoked a cigarette or 5 or whatever, and then waited for Beverly. 8. Yeah, at 8.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm waiting for Beverly. So she comes through. I give her a little ciggy too. We get jiggy with the ciggy, and she go. I bring her stuff up and all that stuff. We dap her up and all that stuff. We out. So I go back into the apartment. I see my mom. I see my brother. And my first thing, I'm like, yo, what's the business? And they say, what we're talking about, Kirk. And then so they start playing this. You ever hear? There's this music video by artist Cher called "Believe in Love." Like, if you believe in a thing called love. I'm like, Yo, Mom, that's not Tupac. She's like, hey, Kirk, we can't just play Tupac nonstop. All right, we could play some other music. So I'm like, all right, this is so weird. Bloods are running away. Chanel's crying. We're not playing Tupac. Today is weird. And I'm still a little curious about everything going on with the Freddy Krueger Candyman tale. My mom, she's playing this song, and she is doing her head bob and dancing and all that. And while that's happening, I'm thinking, all right, they're doing this. My brother's over there. He's baking a cake or whatever. I'm going to test this theory out. I have a bathroom. I'm going to go in the bathroom. I'm going to let down the blinds so it's dark as possible. There's a mirror in there. And I'm going to try all of these out. I'm going to the Bloody Mary, Freddy Krueger, Sylvester Stallone may have been something they had mentioned at one point. These cowards were cowering that day. So I was like, I'm going to try all of those out. So I'm in the bathroom, just me. I look in the mirror before turning the lights off. I give myself a heads up because I like what I see. And I turned the lights off. And then I'm remiss to mention, I did bring a pair of scissors in with me because I was like, oh, okay, well, apparently the big one's the Bloody Mary. Bring the scissors in with you. I do that. I get the scissors, bring them in. Everything's off. I will admit, my breathing was a little heavy at first. I was like, all right, you're really about to do this. If this is true, what everyone's saying, this may have ramifications, and you may have to knuckle up with Freddy Krueger right now. Are you ready to do that? And then that made me excited because I was like, it made me mad at Freddy Krueger that he was going to come in my home and do that. So I was like, yeah, no, I am ready. He better come out. So I do the Freddy Krueger one first. I say Freddy Krueger. And I hear a crash. My brother dropped a fork while he was making the cake sort of thing. And I was like, damn it, Brian. But nothing happened beyond that though. Mm-hmm. So I was like, all right, maybe it's like you gotta try some more out sort of thing. So then I say Candyman. Candyman. The intercom buzzes. my grandmother, she just got back, and I was like, oh man, shout out to my grandmother. And I was like, it was nice to see her. I was like, I can't wait to fight this Freddy Krueger and Bloody Mary so I could hang out with my grandmother. It was going to be nice. She's gangsta like me. I like that. But she, they're all opening door and all that. And then finally, I'm like, all right, this is the big one. I grab scissors. I have a pair of scissors in each hand. I chop them up like this. I'm like, damn, these are good scissors. And then I say, Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary. I twirl around one time, look towards where I think is the mirror, and I say Bloody Mary again. My heart is frozen. I hear nothing. I don't hear my family saying anything. I don't hear Cher in the background. I don't hear my brother dropping utensils. I don't hear my grandmother coming back. I hear nothing. I turn the light on, and I see that there's a little bit of red on the toilet. Mind you, I was nowhere near the toilet. I see there's red on the toilet. And I go closer towards it, and I see there's blood. There's blood on top of the toilet. It was a white porcelain toilet, and there was blood on there. I look closer, and I see that in the blood is my name. Kirk is spelled out in blood on the toilet. I left the room, not afraid, just wondering, like, oh, what was that about? My grandmother, she's there. She brought us candy. And I was like, hey, Ma, that's what I call my grandmother and stuff. I was like, hey, let me, I want to run something by you. I had some run-ins with a few cowards today where they told me that, like, if I say Bloody Mary 3 times in the bathroom with scissors, that they would come up and mutilate me. I tried it out, and it seems like there's some sort of situation on toilet. And I don't, can you check it with me? Like, I trust my grandmother. I've thought that,
sure.
She goes in the bathroom and comes out and says, Kirk, why are you doing your jokes on me? I just came from a long day of work. I go back in the bathroom and see that there's nothing there. Just the scissors on the dresser next to the sink, but the blood was gone. My name wasn't there, and the mirror was intact. I went on to join football teams. I got my scholarship to Howard University.
Sure.
I ran track and field. I don't remember which year I won the gold medal. I know those things kind of fog up after a while, but I went on to live an average life, and I went on to live just an average life. Sometimes I think, though, of like, man, that was strange. I think I did see blood on the toilet, and I ever realized something like that. It's the Bronx. Things can happen sometimes. I'm just glad to say that I made it out. The end.
Well done. Bravo. I'd give you a round of applause if it wasn't going to hurt people's ears listening. That was phenomenally done. I really enjoyed the retelling of that story. You had me on edge the entire time. Like, what's happening next? What's coming next? So very well done.
Yeah, thanks, man. I don't know. I'm kind of vibing as if both were true. I'm like, I'm like, when I was done telling the first one, I was like, I kind of went back into it a little bit of like the feeling. And now I've told that one. I'm like, damn, I'm feeling triumphant. I'm feeling pretty triumphant. I've really conquered that fear. And I have a gold medal? Damn, happiness really is on the other side of fear.
Yeah. I mean, look, I was watching as you were telling us, so I was like, hold up. I mean, I'm sure he's fast, but is he gold medal fast? Like, that's pretty fast.
I'm pretty fast.
What do you think the impact of the changes you've made to your story? Like, how do you think they would have affected you long term if that had been the reality?
I think I would have discovered physical solitude much faster. Because with the first story, you get used to not wanting to be by yourself. And that lasts for a while. I want to say a few years. Or just not feeling comfortable being by yourself, sort of thing, thinking that something's going to happen, something's right around the corner. And even when you're not thinking that, the feeling is still there, and you're not really sure why, but that feeling doesn't completely go away. So it's still there. So it wasn't until later in life that I realized, like, oh, I actually like being by myself a lot. I like being in a movie theater by myself. I like being, I was about to say in the bathroom by myself, but it's true. I do like being in the bathroom by myself. I like those spaces. I like hanging out in the dark. I think it's like when people do those tanks that, what are they called? Like Joe Rogan talks about all the time, like deprivation tanks, where it's like you cut off all your senses. Mm-hmm. I find that I get little tastes of that when I'm in like dark rooms, mm-hmm. and I feel safe. I think I maybe would have discovered that sooner, or perhaps I wouldn't have as much of appreciation for it now if I did discover it sooner. So I think that had an impact. I think if it was the second time around, perhaps the night terrors, who knows, maybe that was always in me and it just needed something to trigger it. So while that may have triggered it in my childhood, perhaps something else would have triggered it into adulthood. Perhaps it would have been something that pertains to relationships, and then that would then have some sort of complex with my dynamics within a relationship. Mm-hmm. So who knows? I may have been triumphant on the track and field, but not so much in love life. Mm-hmm. So I'm one of the believers of, things happen, and if it's maybe not necessarily for a reason, but they do happen. Mm-hmm. And my thing is to be at peace with it. Mm-hmm. So while I may have the gold trophies, and I may have I did slap a lot of my friends in the second one. I did slap a lot of my friends. I did slap some gang members in that one too.
I was going to ask you about all the child abuse that you seem to fantasize about in your second film.
Yeah. No, I'm just smacking people left and right. And keep in mind, in the story, no one smacks me. No one smacks me.
Right.
I'm moonwalking stuff. I'm smacking people left and right. So maybe that's a good thing. The second thing didn't happen because that was kind of brutal. These kids are already in the Bronx. Mm-hmm. The other ones, they're in gangs. They don't need 8-year-old me slapping them. They don't need that. So I'm glad that I was able to spare them of that brutality.
Sure. Why the gold medal? Why was that an important part of the retelling?
I wanted to just highlight the triumphant feeling of it. Just feeling fly, feeling like an accolade that is probably approachable if I wasn't paralyzed by these terrors.
So, Kirk, we have a tradition on this podcast where before we end every episode, we ask our guests to share a quick childhood story that puts a smile on their face.
I think of a Sunday. It was Sunday. I'll keep this brief. It was a Sunday afternoon. My brother and I were looking for something to watch. We were just bored. And my mother was like, well, maybe we'll look for something on TV or something. She had TV Guide, and not on the internet, not on her phone, the actual magazine for TV Guide. And she stumbled across something that would go on to be one of my loves in life. And this was the beginning of it. Because on this day, she discovered that at 8 o'clock, they would be airing WrestleMania 14. And my brother and I, my grandmother, aunt, mom, we watched WrestleMania 14. And that was my introduction into big time wrestling. Like I always saw like a little matches here and there, but that was like my whoa, everything, every match. Like I believe it opened with the Road Dogg and Billy Gunn versus Cactus Jack and Terry Funk in a dumpster match. And I remember that all the way up. Oh no, it was a battle royal that they opened with Road Warrior and Animal. And then the big match with that one was Shawn Michaels versus Stone Cold with Mike Tyson as the referee. And everything about that event and about my whole family was there, that we were all into it. And it was something new that I was discovering. That's a feeling that also sticks with me. That feeling doesn't go away. That feeling of wonder and amazement. And it was all thanks to a TV Guide. So that was one that a Bronx tale that you could play for your children.
I think that's wonderful. I remember my introduction to wrestling was, I remember I used to have a babysitter, the Flores family. Shout out to the Flores family if you're listening. And particularly their son, Alex, I used to be very close with. By very close, I mean I was 5, he was 12. We were the best of friends. Nice. But he introduced me to wrestling, so I got to watch. I couldn't tell you the names because I was so young. But I remember there being like a wrestler that used to come out in a clown suit.
Doink.
Huh?
Doink. His name was Doink the Clown. Yeah.
And I remember, I think someone named like Ramon or something like that. He was like really thin and had like long curly hair. Is that right?
Razor Ramon.
Yes, Razor Ramon.
Yeah, Razor Ramon.
Obviously Hulk Hogan and like
Diesel.
There was, like, you know what I mean? And that was my first introduction to the WWF at the time. But, you know, and it was fond memories just playing them on the Sega Genesis. And he used to do that thing to me. You know, you do to little kids back. So for those of you listening who are younger, back in the day, you had to physically plug in your controller into the system. Yeah. So what they would do was they would pull out the controller and put it like right in front of the system and give me a controller so that I thought I was playing. And they would sit there and play in front of me. I'm like, yeah, I'm so good. Meanwhile, I wasn't actually playing.
When you think about it, that is one of the kinder forms of manipulation, especially for a child to do.
Sure.
Because it's like, okay, we don't want you to play because you're 5-year-old and you're going to mess us up, but we want you to feel okay.
Yeah, I want you to feel involved.
Yeah, so it's like, all right, I can respect that.
We also have a second tradition on this podcast where we like to highlight a charity or an organization at the end of every show.
Okay.
Which do you have a charity for us or an organization?
Yeah, something I enjoy. I enjoy wildlife, nature. You know, I think a lot of people have gone into that, especially with everything going on with COVID, of having some solitude for themselves, but not being left alone because they're out in nature. And everything's just beautiful about it. I'm going to give a shout out to the National Wildlife Federation. Their whole thing is protecting wildlife, and, you know, doing things that's helpful for the environment and education for children, and offering different like stewardships for people that want to learn more and help out. So I dig what they're doing, and charity-wise, apparently they're pretty reputable in terms of how they distribute the funds and the donations that they get. So yeah, you know, if you're interested in wildlife as well, I highly recommend giving them a look.
Also, where can we find you?
Streets, but other than that, you could, if you're interested in podcasting, I'm the co-host of the regionally celebrated proper Ebonics with Kirk and Alan, co-host Alan Massenberg and I. Doing for a while. Juan Carlos, you were just on it. You were on a great episode.
No,
yeah, I won't do any spoilers for anyone that may listen, but there was some breaking news on our edition of it that was pretty special. So that was great. You could also find me on like Instagram, Captain Keys 24. I'm also on Pinterest. My handle is The Real Michelle Obama. So feel free to follow me on any one of those. And, you know, I really, you know, yeah. And also random podcasts and all that stuff. This was fun. This was cool. I haven't thought of that story for a while, and it was cool to think of it and put a remix on it. So yeah, thank you for the opportunity to do that.
No, absolutely. And by the way, for those of you guys who are listening, you guys know Alan Massenberg because Alan was a former guest on the Revisionary Podcast. So now you get to hear from his co-host, and we're bringing this full circle, right? That's what we're doing here.
Yeah, I don't know when this is going to come out, but if anyone's around Phantom Power in Lancaster on December 12th, I'll be opening for Nick Griffin there. So if that's another thing you could check out if you like.
Do you have any last words for the Revisionaries before I let you go?
Yeah. Dostoevsky's The Brothers Karamazov. If you're looking for a book that's not only a family saga, but also a murder mystery woven with philosophical and conceptual theories, boy, oh boy, do I recommend it. And if you do read it, or if you have already read it, please contact me via Instagram because I want to chat up someone about it. I've been talking to people on Goodreads. I want to talk to an actual person about it. So that would be nice.
Yeah, well, fair enough. Well, thank you again for coming on the Revisionary Podcast, Kirk.
Thank you. God bless.
The Revisionary Podcast.
So that was a wonderful story. I actually really enjoy that. And what I enjoy about it is the way he told the story. He knew exactly where to pause to give it some dramatic effect. And I personally think Kirk killed that. Also, I think that there's something to be said about childhood trauma and how things can affect us long term. I feel like oftentimes we as people don't realize the long-term effects that we can have on people's lives. Like, this was probably like an innocent story. And it's a story that I heard. I remember growing up in the Bronx, hearing these same stories about not saying Bloody Mary in the mirror 3 times. I mean, I'm an adult and I still won't do it, even though I understand that nothing's going to happen. But this is a real problem, and it exists. And here we are with Kirk dealing with the aftermath of that. So a lot of respect for him, and I really enjoy the way he told this story. And I really enjoy his timing and his comedic style, and where he like interlinks the way he speaks with the types of jokes that he's making. So I thought that was very brilliantly done. I really enjoyed that thoroughly. As always, make sure that you support Kirk's charity. I'm gonna go ahead and drop the link in the description, and it's very important that you make sure you reach out and see if you can and you have the time, go ahead and support the National Wildlife Federation. But with that being said, this is Juan Carlos, and as always, thank you for listening.
This is the